Okay, let's see if I can get my train of thought back. So,
see, Tim, I'm going to tell you, I think this is really the most important of all this stuff where he and I are concerned. It's not over yet. And that makes no sense to me whatsoever, but I know it's not over yet. It's all about the ark.
Well, there was we put a tremendous amount of energy into Exodus. I wanted to know exactly where the Ark of the Covenant was built. I wanted to know all of the details of the construction, what the logistics of that type of project would be. And going into that kind of detail started to expand on what we would find there on the ground. Archaeologically, we would see certain things, certain remains should be there. All aspects of what the mountain, the character of the mountain, what it should look like, we defined.
Okay, finally here, this is the Catherine Tourist Village.
And so these are the things that we had in our mind when we went to the traditional Sinai and St. Catherine's of the Sinai Peninsula. And that is the reason why we all knew as a family, Penny and I especially, that was not the location. It didn't fit the biblical description at all. Now, the controversy that ensued afterwards with other locations is something that came later. We picked up the gold mines of Midian, the mountain of God. So we started to see that maybe the vision wasn't completely amiss. Maybe the idea of Sinai wasn't just completely out of the question that we would find this location. So then these other books gave us clues, and we started, it refired the dream, it refired the vision, and then we started that going back to the Sinai idea.
Yeah, because what became glaringly obvious to us was that there was something bigger than us happening here. The odds of coincidence, we have a tendency to think very rationally, very scientifically. At the very beginning, we thought, a vision, good grief, what is that? How can we move on that? And yet, what was happening to us all through this trip to Egypt, in looking back over the 30-day period, everything had been orchestrated for us to get to that place at that time. The odds of these books appearing one day after another, the triple odd of another man whom we did not know at the very last point that we crossed back over into Arabia. There was another guy saying, Jebel Oz on the other side of this Gulf of Aqaba, that's the real Mount Sinai. And that refired that ark vision. Just, it was like going into space flight. It was just, we were just hyper about it, that we really did have a date with destiny at Mount Sinai, if we could just find the right Mount Sinai.
And so 14 trips later, we obviously we were going back to the mountain 14 times, searching, looking, exploring, videotape, documenting. There were certain parts of the mountain that drew us back over and over again for more documentation. And in the process, over the years from 92 to 99, we started to really research the history of the site, and we began to uncover a controversy that was going on about the location and the people that originally found or were suspect of this site. And so we started to kind of try to understand what had happened initially. And I have to go back, and I always continue to go back to Sir Charles Beck. Actually, it's Dr. Charles Beck, that was a friend of Sir Richard Burton, who wrote the Gold Mines of Midian book. And back to his original letters, where his vision was, hey, Mount Sinai cannot be at St. Catherine's. It doesn't fit the Bible at all. So I'm looking, and he had an idea that it was in Saudi Arabia. So I followed some of his work, and I believe that he was the first man really to identify Jebel Oz as being the true Mount Sinai.
Come to find out, there are others that in subsequent years after him thought, well, maybe Charles Beck has something there. Maybe we should be looking over across the Gulf of Aqaba instead of across the Gulf of Suez. And as the more we researched it, the more we made our trips out there, the more it just became more and more likely that this was, in fact, the mountain. Part of what we were very keen to do was to try and document this on film. which was very difficult, I might add. We didn't have an easy go of it. I don't want it to sound like we were just able to breeze in and out of these areas with great ease and ability, because we were hunted down and chased off so many times. We were arrested numerous times. The frontier forces of the area were not happy at all for Western faces to be around these areas, were they?
We had a number of encounters with the frontier forces. We were hauled off to outback jails. We were taken in front of the emir of Al-Bad. There's a number of close calls that we had with frontier forces, Bedouin, civilian police. It didn't hinder us or stop us from returning back to the mountain to continue documentation. The drive was that strong. Part of this other controversy that was going on, we got involved, and I'll go ahead and make this statement, with a gentleman that had claimed to have found it in 1984, 1985. We gave him video and some photographs initially in that thinking that we were trying to help promote the idea of a Sinai in Arabia. And we continued on with other people that had been at the site and trying to help them to bring up the awareness to the general public that St. Catherine's of the Sinai Peninsula is a fraud, and that the real Mount Sinai is actually located inside of Saudi Arabia in the land of Midian, where it should be.
And of course, this is our opinion based upon having been there and having been at both locations. We were, as Jim was saying, we were very free with the films that we were taking in Arabia to anyone in the States, basically, who was promoting the idea, because we found out that at that time, at least, in the early 90s, we were the only people that were successfully getting film out of the country, and lots of it. And we wanted people who were of professional capabilities to be able to look at some of these things, because we don't have a professional background in archaeology. We wanted this evidence to be searched for and looked over and taken in a context where people who did know what they were talking about, could verify these things for us. It was very difficult at that time for us to imagine that archaeologists from any other country other than Saudi Arabia would be allowed to look at this.
We would take photographs, meet people in Bahrain, transfer the photographs to them, and then allow them to use them in publications and videos. And we had to remain completely anonymous. And we continued to do that all the way up to 1999, when we returned back to the U.S. And now on our website, we list the number of articles and books and videos that have been using our actual photographs and video for the past 9 years.
We are basically the eyewitnesses. Because of the fact that we did live in the country, we had permission to travel throughout the country. We did not have permission to go into these areas. Once again, I want to make it really plain. It was not that we could just freely access the places. We had to be very creative in how we were able to get some of this film. But it is so very important that what is out there on the ground is really fascinating and really phenomenal.